Have you ever just stopped and wondered, how do we know what life was like 1,000 or even 8,000 years ago? I mean, it seems impossible, right? But uncovering the past is probably the greatest detective story ever told. So let's grab our magnifying glasses and dive right in.
And this is really the big question, isn't it? It's the central mystery we're going to try and solve together. It's easy enough to find out what happened yesterday. You just check the news. But what about a long, long time ago? Where do you even start looking for answers?
So, here's our first big hurdle, just the sheer scale of it all. We're not looking back a few decades. We're trying to peer thousands and thousands of years into the past. It's a massive undertaking, but you know what? The clues are out there. You just have to know where to look.
And it's honestly amazing what we can find out. We're not just talking about big battles or famous kings. We can get into the nitty-gritty, the everyday details of life. Things like, what was for dinner? What kind of clothes were in style? What games did kids play? It's these little things that make the past feel so real.
So, who are the detectives in this grand story? Well, they're called historians and archaeologists. Think of them as investigators who use special kinds of clues, which they call sources, to piece together the giant puzzle of the past.
Now, every good detective story needs a location, right? A crime scene, if you will. For our story, that scene is this huge, varied landscape that basically shaped everything about how people lived. Let's pull up the map.
You know, what's so cool is how the geography itself tells a story. Look at the rivers, like the Indus and the Ganga. These were way more than just water sources. They were like ancient highways, the absolute lifeblood of early cities. And then you have the mountains. They acted as these natural frontiers. They made travel tough, sure, but not impossible. And that led to this really incredible mix of cultures over time.
Okay, this timeline is where things get kind of mind-bending. About 8,000 years ago, way out in the hills, people started growing crops for the first time. Then jump forward a few thousand years to about 4,700 years ago, bam! The first big cities pop up along the Indus River. Then fast forward again to 2,500 years ago, and a whole new wave of cities is rising along the Ganga. Each one of these points is a total game changer for how people lived.
All right, we've got our location, we've got our timeline. Now it's time for the really fun part, looking at the actual evidence, the clues that people left behind. This is where the real detective work begins.
So, what exactly are these clues? Well, historians call them sources. It's really just a fancy word for any piece of information we can find from the past. It could be a handwritten book, a carving on a rock, or even just an old clay pot. Every single one is a potential clue.
Now, written clues, they basically come in two flavors. On one hand, you've got manuscripts. These were painstakingly written by hand, usually on really delicate stuff like palm leaves, so they're super fragile and rare. On the other hand, you've got inscriptions. These were carved into hard surfaces like stone. They were built to last. Here's a perfect example. This is a page from a palm leaf manuscript. I mean, just look at it. These books held all sorts of incredible knowledge, religious beliefs, scientific theories, epic poems, you name it. But because they were written on, leaves, most of them got eaten by insects or just rotted away. That makes the ones that survived unbelievably precious. And then you have the complete opposite. Check out this inscription. It is way more durable. Rulers, like the famous Ashoka, use these to basically broadcast their orders or show off their victories in battle. They wanted to make sure their legacy would last. It is, quite literally, history carved in stone.
But what about all the stories from people who didn't write things down, or from a time before writing even existed? For that, we turn to our other detective, the archaeologist. These are the folks who explore and dig up the physical objects people left behind. The tools, the pots, the buildings, even the bones that tell a story without a single word.
And these are the kinds of amazing things they find. Over here we have a painted pot. It's about 4,700 years old. And on the other side, an ancient coin from around 2,500 years ago. These aren't just old objects. They're packed with clues. The pot's design tells us about their art, and the coin tells us about their economy and who was in charge.
So we've got our detectives, we've got our clues, we're solving the case, right? Well, here's the twist. There isn't just one single story of the past to uncover. The investigation actually reveals that the past is plural.
And this is a really crucial idea. The life of a king was completely different from the life of a farmer, right? The day-to-day experience of a merchant was nothing like that of a hunter.
This means we don't have one single unified past. What we have are many, many different pasts, all happening at the same time.
Let's just compare for a second. Kings and rulers, they kept records, lots of them. They carved their victories into stone for everyone to see. But what about ordinary people, like farmers or fishermen? For the most part, they didn't keep records of their daily lives. That means their stories are so much harder to find.
And that is exactly why archaeology is so incredibly important. By digging up the tools people used, the houses they lived in, and yes, even their bones, archaeologists help us catch these amazing glimpses into forgotten lives. But it's still a puzzle with a ton of missing pieces, and so much about their world is still a mystery.
And really, that's what makes all of this so exciting. The investigation is never truly over. We've seen how historians and archaeologists work like detectives, using all these different clues to piece together the many stories of our pasts. It just reminds us that there are countless stories out there still waiting to be told. The only question is, which one will you explore?